is when it's Valentine's Day, when it is the week of love, the day of love, I'm going to talk about nothing except love. And we are live here to chat about all of the romance we watched the last couple weeks, including the Super Bowl. Just kidding. Guess what didn't happen at the Super Bowl? Chiefs didn't win, and Travis Kelce didn't propose to Taylor Swift. You know, you lose some, you lose some. Congrats to the Eagles, though. There's your preview. There's my news. Unfortunately, Eagles are a great team, so I can't even be mad. They're wonderful. They did a great job. Jalen Hurts is fantastic. His all-female team, I know, is having a time. If I wasn't a Chiefs fan, I would be so happy right now. How are you guys doing?
Fantastic.
Good. Didn't watch the Super Bowl. No surprises here. So I had a perfectly average weekend. Good weekend.
This was just another winter
It was
weekend.
just another weekend. Yeah.
No, for sure.
Yep.
Anybody bring me any news?
I have some.
Okay, go ahead.
So PBS, where all good shows go,
Correct.
has a Miss Austen TV show coming out May 4th. A little preview into what we read and watched this week. I am currently reading the book that this is based on. We will get into it later, but I'm excited.
I'm so excited. Anything Austinian, I'm sad. Anything PBS, I suddenly am 85 years old and am also sad.
Yeah.
So, like,
Yeah.
the combination of the two.
Like, I pay for the premium subscription for PBS. Like, I have reached 85 before I reached 25, okay? That is who I am as a person.
You're just one step away from being in, like, crochet Facebook group drama.
I mean, I am on the Austen Facebook group drama, which is close enough.
You know what? When I think I couldn't admire you more, you reach a new level.
Yay, thank you.
You're so welcome. Carey, you said no news for me today?
News, I guess news is like, I'll use the really stretchy term for the word news. Obviously, if you've not been under a rock and you're a Marvel fan, you know that Captain America 4 drops this week. If I'm not mistaken, it drops on Valentine's Day, but I'm not always clear about how that always happens. But yes, so Captain America 4 drops this week, and then in May, if I'm not mistaken, Thunderbolts drops, and then in July we have I'm not sorry, Captain America, Fantastic Four. So this is obviously a really good opportunity for sort of Marvel to reassert its movie making dominance. These three movies will tell a lot about the future direction for Marvel at cinema. So I'm pretty sure they're excited about it. I'm excited about Captain America 4. So we'll see how it goes.
I'm excited too. I'm not even like a Marvel-y like that, but I'm just really interested, like you said, to see the direction this goes. And also, I'm in the market for a new hyperfixation now that NFL has ended. So it's either that or women's sports. In fact, I have been seeking out women's sports to such a degree that my YouTube like homepage where they like give you your recommended stuff was like, here, you might be interested in a live stream of a local lacrosse game, women's lacrosse. That's what I've most recently got. We're scraping that barrel. I am riveted by Unrivaled currently, the off-season WNBA league. That's been fantastic. We're in the middle of a 1v1 tournament. I would never call that bottom of the barrel. Never. That's fantastic. Riveting stuff. It's really scratching an itch in my brain right now. And that's the only news I bring to you. That and all the shows that we're about to cover today.
Can I say something about your news?
Yes, please.
I'm going to take this opportunity to say that the Unrivaled 1 vs. 1 is freaking fantastic television.
Yes.
And I'm going to say out loud that I know that the NBA is scared to do the same thing because those guys are scared to have to play somebody one-on-one and see them lose.
Absolutely. The 1v1 tournament for Unrivaled is so fun. It's such fantastic television because, you know, they're playing for money and they're playing for pride and prestige and all that kind of stuff, but it's not like there's no end of the world, and they're not faking like it's end of the world. They're fun. These are all like women who know each other, friends with each other. Hell, I think some of them are exes type vibe. Like they play on the same team. So it's really fun to like get to see them play in this way. You really see the love of the game come out. And there's just no fakeness to it. It's just fantastic. They're all so talented. They're all really attractive, which doesn't hurt. It's just 10 out of 10. I have been glued yesterday and the day before, and I'm excited for the final on Friday, Valentine's Day. The true meaning of the season is whether Nafisa wins or not. So we'll see how that goes. Let's dive into Miss Eliza and the Duke, question mark, not the Duke. Since we last talked, several episodes have come out, and actually, by my calculation, we only have one episode from this latest season that we have not seen yet. So we are really approaching the finale. So my question for you all is, as we've gotten further into the meat of the season, as we kind of initially suspected, we saw more glimpses into Eliza's inner life and her background, the school flashbacks, things like that. Is there anything new you feel you've learned about her? And what do you think they're building towards for her in the finale?
I will go ahead and say, because of that PBS description I recently mentioned, I've already seen the whole season, so I know what happens.
Okay, fantastic.
So I will try to phrase it in such a way not to spoil. I know we're pretty okay with spoilers here, but so a lot of it's just like you gotta see it yourself. Yeah. I've been pretty vocal about actually really loving this season of Miss Scarlet. That I think that as much as I liked William, I think I agreed with him more often than not when it was kind of a spat between the two of them. I think losing him allowed her to finally become the fully realized character that she was like itching to be. I think that it's been a really good way to dig into the intricacies of her character that were before not explored, specifically the softer edges. And I'll just say that it felt like the season was building towards her being this character that had softer edges and was going to put her on more. And I'm right a lot of it.
So a little part of that was mildly cutting out for me, but I definitely got the gist of it. And the most important line that I got from that was, I'm right a lot of the time. And yes, you are. And you're right about a lot of things, but never, ever would I doubt that you would be right about Miss Eliza and the Duke / the detective, sergeant, inspector, blah, 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 etc. The fact that you were enjoying it definitely brought me a lot of comfort, because while we often enjoy things for different reasons and in different ways, if you enjoy it, I probably enjoy it, and vice versa, even if we end up forming like slightly different opinions about it. I've really been not just enjoying seeing her. She's not really by herself, but she's interacting with everything in a different way, which is going to lead into one of my questions later. She's interacting not just with men in a different way, Blake in a different way. She's interacting with Ivy in a different way. She's thinking through things with her partner's assistant, the one landlord lady whose name I forget, everything about her, she's having to re-find herself outside of a longtime man / friend who's known her since, what we learned was near childhood. And I think that's been really interesting this season, where under duress and against our will, we're forced as a collective audience to move on from a toxic boyfriend. It's interesting. Carey, what are you thinking?
Well, I agree. It's sort of takes. Are you guys hearing me okay? I'm hearing like a backdrop.
I do hear an echo.
Okay.
I hear you fine, but I'll mute so there's less of an echo if I'm at all a problem. Go on.
No, my whole thing was it feels like taking William out of the picture a little bit. I know I've probably not been one of the people who sort of like looked at the show and always sort of felt like it needed to be relationship centric, right? But taking him out of it gives an opportunity to, like you said, sort of explore her relationships with other people, um, in sort of different ways, which also gives us as an audience an opportunity to learn about her in different ways. So I really appreciate that. And even though there have been sort of hints with the inspector about this, that, and the other, I still feel like it's more of an opportunity for her to sort of have to, I don't know if I want to say sort of prove herself all over again, but it's sort of an opportunity for her to sort of explore what she does in her job as opposed to what she does in her job and how that sort of impacts her relationship romantically or otherwise with another person. It's like, hey, it's just an opportunity to sort of like say, hey, this is what I can do. This is how I can do it. Let me show you. And I like that focus of what this season has given us an opportunity to explore. And also, like I said, the relationship that she has with other people. Um, I think that's been really fun this year.
Yeah. Um, we've pointed out before that the camera work and the lighting and the reused sets, for all that it's funny, uh gives like it's hard to describe or pinpoint what the difference in the feel is, but I think in talking to the about this, it made me realize this is the first season that through the entire season I felt confident that she was a good detective and she wasn't just scrambling or trying to prove herself in a I'm gonna one up William, I'm gonna show him, I'm like I have to prove myself to either him or sometimes it was to what's it, Patrick. Um, Most of the other seasons, there was always an element of I'm having to prove my abilities to somebody else. And weirdly, this season has a lot to do with her proving to Blake that he needs her, but it felt extremely different. Whereas previously it was a scramble, it was a panic, it led her to making decisions of very like dubious nature, and she was sloppy and she was messy. By no means does she fall in line with the proper protocol this entire season, but it felt far more like she's confident and she's assured that she knows what she's doing, and she's simply trying to prove to him that she gets to be the exception to his no private detective rule. And even by the point that you guys are at, I think you're starting to see that she is. And even without it being quite as like formally or vocally addressed, you can definitely tell that her just doing her job and doing it well has earned his respect in a way that she previously could never maintain with the other men in her life, because she was operating only for their respect, whereas now she's operating because she respects herself. And I think it's that flip that has made her, we've talked about her being sometimes an unlikable character. It makes her a much more likable character to watch her do these things, not because she's trying to prove something, not out of spite, but because she just is that good. And I think that's a really, really it lightens the tone of the show. It makes her relationships richer, even if they're not romantic. It makes you enjoy and root for all the connections that she has made previously and is now fostering in a much better, more healthy way throughout the season.
I could literally never say it better than Kate, but you're hitting on all of the things that have made this season gratifying and in a way that I didn't expect it to be gratifying. It's nice to see Eliza, at the beginning of the season, while we were hoping for this, we were hoping for this moment of self actualization, to use an annoying psychology term. We're still seeing her be sad and despondent. Last time we talked, last time we met, last time we
Mhm.
reviewed this. We saw her sad, despondent, questioning certain things. She was not necessarily alone, but there was an element of loneliness. And we're seeing her now. For me, I finished episode 5. There's one more episode left to technically air for the States or whatever. We're seeing her, like you said, not try to prove herself to anybody except herself. And we're also seeing her reap the fruits of her labor. It was really sweet to see her get to meet Blake's daughter, and Blake's daughter is so impressed with the fact that she's a detective and she's talking to her schoolmates about her. Just these elements of there are other people impressed with her than just some boy that she met when she was a teenager and stayed friends with, which is also great. I'm never knocking romance, and I'm not knocking what Eliza and William had, but they had a really tough challenge showing us that there can be something better. And even though we had all acknowledged what Eliza and William had was toxic, it was just so entertaining and so heartwarming that we loved it. And it was hard for us to let it go in the same way that it would be hard for fictional Eliza to let it go, but showing us truly something better that still has some fun banter and this, that, whatever. But there's not this element of this is the one and only person that Eliza needs to prove herself to. This is potentially, their romantic connection is one of the reasons why she has a connection to the police department. She is left, regardless of the outcome of her romance with Blake, which of course I definitely don't know because I haven't watched the last episode. Who could ever say what will happen? She's left feeling like she did this on her own. And of course she had in previous seasons, but now we're given the opportunity to find that silver lining of William's departure and see her do this on her own and do it just as successfully or perhaps more so, question mark. And I think that's great. I was ready to be a hater. Like, I Kendrick Lamar bootcut jeans. I was ready to be a raging bitch about it, and I'm not. Mostly.
Yeah. I think a lot of it really comes down to with William gone and the lighter tone of the show. There's something about it that feels like the training wheels are off. And she gets to soar. And she was previously earning her way, but now it feels like it. Like she really is fighting and earning for what she has rather than it kind of feeling like ripping out of William's hand. Even though they weren't always doing that, it constantly felt like that.
Yeah. It's really, she is now visually a separate element from her title character. It is not Eliza and the Duke anymore. It is Eliza, and truly Blake is entirely separate. And that is initially so unromantic and so unappealing. And they were able to find a way to serve that to us as just as, perhaps more romantic and more appealing. Well, it is Valentine's week. So, I've got to throw a romance question in here at the end, especially with a season like this where romance is on the forefront of our minds, even if it's not necessarily in the forefront of the script. So, we do see drops of romance throughout. Ivy's wedding date has been set. Eliza goes on a dinner date with a suspect of the week. But all are more or less fraught with some kind of conflict. So I'm wondering, and I think I'm getting hints of this based on how we've discussed Eliza and Blake, how is the romance and more generally interpersonal development? So relationships that can be romanticized, if not necessarily the romance connections. How is that sitting with you this season, given the change in the previous main toxic, but we love it romance?
I will say this. Um, One of the relationships that I found myself most engrossed in was Ivy and Barnabas.
Yeah.
Um, as someone who's probably found themselves on the wrong side of a relationship where you sort of felt like it was uneven in terms of how you felt about them and how they might have felt about you. I mean, that really hit me personally, and sort of like I was actually ready and prepared for that relationship to have dissolved. And I'll be quite honest, it hurt. Like it was hurt. I was hurt, and it shocked me more than I expected it to, because on its face, you sort of feel like it's sort of a background relationship. If it works out, if it doesn't work out, I don't know that it would impact a whole lot of people. But what Barnabas had to say about that relationship and the realization of finally sort of seeing like what probably everyone else had sort of seen about that relationship and where it was going, and how it was sort of like just sort of had no momentum to it. That was sort of really tough to deal with for me personally. And I think because of the lack of a romantic relationship between quote unquote the leads on the show, gives this an opportunity to sort of like flesh out relationship opportunities or interpersonal relationships amongst like other characters like those two, because I don't know that they would have sort of gotten that sort of breathing room in a previous season. Obviously, if you're talking about a romantic relationship, obviously Eliza and the Duke were doing the heavy lifting on that for the most part. Even if it wasn't like an active relationship, that's where the
They
audience
weren't
went
doing
for,
any
right?
fun heavy lifting. They were doing the toxic
Sure,
heavy lifting.
sure. Um, but back to Ivy and Barnabas, I was sort of prepared and sort of really hurt to see that thing dissolve, and then to see it sort of like rebound the way it did. I was actually happy to see that, but it had me questioning how that came to be, right? Because if it's like they, if their quote unquote living quote unquote arrangement didn't work out how Ivy had wanted it, would she have still wanted to be with Barnabas? And how does that make him feel, sort of looking at that and sort of seeing that? That's been pretty interesting to me in terms of how that sort of gets played out. But I enjoyed that storyline.
I agree. I liked it too. You know, I think Ivy's actually one of the more interesting, like, background characters, so to call her. Um, she's not quite a foil to Eliza, but she does kind of play a really key role of reflecting societal norms and, fitting societal norms while also still having, independent thought and that kind of stuff. And that's really a lot of times embodied by Ivy. And so I thought it was interesting that they went the route of spending a lot of time showing that she had become dissatisfied with the kind of mundane aspects of her life and her wanting to find something new and interesting. And I really liked that. And I think that they did a really good job of expressing that and showing how it came to be and like showing how she got a job. And it definitely tightened the mutual respect between her and Eliza. I do think that they could have done a little more legwork to have made the explanation on her and Barnabas equally as is compelling, because like you said, it hurt watching Barnabas have to call it off, because for the most part her and Barnabas and just Barnabas in general has been kind of a comedic character, playing off Eliza. But because it was the only like fully confirmed long-standing romance in the show this season, they did have a little bit more of a serious tone than they have previously. And I think that they could have done a little bit more work or spent even just a couple more lines really explaining why she was being distant, and it being like outside of her professional dissatisfaction, because it was separated. And I think that they could have done a little bit more to explain what was going on in her head between Barnabas. And even it could have fully just been that, like, she was scared to make another big change and leave Eliza. Like, Eliza is kind of her family. She doesn't talk to anybody else. And if they had just leaned a little further into that, said a couple more lines about it, I think it would have sold even further, and it would have made it a bit more compelling and relatable, because there is a point where you start to see Barnabas suffering, and like you understand that Ivy is busy and has a lot going on in her head, she's feeling these things, but because she's not communicating it, or it's not even really being communicated silently to the audience, there is a level of, come on, Ivy, what's going on? So that, like, I do wish they would have had a couple more lines there, but overall I did also really enjoy how they handled that.
It was interesting. You're picking up on something where it seemed like they were kind of riding a line, and thus far than previous seasons, Ivy has sort of, in some ways, stood in for the audience. Sometimes she reacts to Eliza the way we might react to Eliza. She might guide Eliza or observe things and make little comments about, well, what's really going on, whatever, in the way that we as the audience may have already thought or are led to think that way because Ivy has said that. And as such, when we see Ivy drag her heels when it comes to the wedding, they leave it somewhat almost, I don't want to say open ended, but multiple choice might be the word when it comes to what her reason is. On the one hand, it could be primarily because of her connection and loyalty to Eliza, and she is uncertain if Eliza is ready to leave the nest or be in the nest alone, as it were. On the other hand, she is also entering like a new golden prime season of her life. She's working in the police department. She's working outside of domestic home work. And we see that as very exciting for her. We see her learning that she's got skills that strangers recognize, folks that she just met, people who are also experts recognize her expertise. We see that in her interaction with Blake, but it's inferred that she's having that in her interactions with others in the police station. And that may be more fulfilling to her than a romantic connection. She has waited decades for both. She has waited for a romantic connection that means something the way it does in her current situation. And she's waited decades for a community place that she's seeing in her job where she is something outside of what that society would classify as sort of a second place domestic participant. She is not the lady of the house. She is the housekeeper. We, in our current understanding of community connections and hierarchy, can see that she was the matriarch of the house. She was the matriarch towards Eliza, but that society would not have categorized her that way. So getting the level of respect that she got in the police department, getting the recognition of her expertise she already had, to be clear, work ethic she already had, both of those would be intoxicating for her. And we see that kind of compete. So both of those could be reasons why she doesn't necessarily want to move forward. Or maybe in a really raw and uncomfortable way, maybe she is uncertain about her connection with her partner. Maybe she is uncertain about the future. Maybe she does like him less than he likes her. So there's multiple paths depending on what the audience wants to see, what they can connect with, because she is our stand-in. She is the audience stand-in. There's multiple paths for why she would drag her heels and then eventually move forward with it. And I wonder if they left that unclear intentionally so we could all attach to a different reason so we could kind of all be Ivy, or if they were maybe just lazy and should have made that a little clearer. I'm inclined to agree with you that the one that stands out the most to me was her loyalty and connection to Eliza, but it's not lost on me how much that job at the police station meant to her as a fully realized individual.
Yeah, I agree. I think it had something to do with all of the above, but it's not, there are times where you can leave it kind of open-ended and it's more powerful that way. But I think in not directly addressing any of them, it kind of pulled the punch a little bit. But that's it's a really small critique. And I think it's really one of the only few things I felt this season could have been done a little bit better. So, it's a nitpick at that point, because it's not like we are oblivious to what could have been. So we all know these are the 3 or 4 big factors that could have led to this. And so it's really more of just well, the execution could have been a little bit better. They could have committed to something. They could have committed to all of the above. And I think all of the above is actually the most valid answer.
That's maybe the most human answer is it's all the things, and maybe Ivy doesn't even know which one is most important, but for whatever reason she's dragging her heels. I agree with Carey and you as well that that was one of the more emotionally impactful and sad and real and raw storylines this season. Well, I could talk about Miss Eliza and the Duke, or not the Duke, Miss Eliza and the Inspector Blake. Doesn't have a ring to it. I could talk about Miss Eliza for quite a while, but we watched some other things this week, and I want to give us a chance to dive into that. And Carey, selfishly, I'm going to start with you because you watched a season one finale that I just finished watching earlier this afternoon. Take it away and tell us about something else you watched this week.
Um, so I I did watch the season one finale for High Potential. Full disclosure here, right? I have not I had not been watching all of the episodes, right? So I told myself, I was like, you know what, let me catch this episode and see if I can sort of like jump in and see where we are, see where the story is, and I can just sort of let the narrative fill in the blanks, right? Which I'm sort of happy I did. But what I absolutely positively did not know was that this was the season one finale that I sort of jumped back into, right? So I could tell that it from the very beginning that it sort of had like a different sort of feel to it in terms of what the first or initial investigation was, and the fact that it wasn't sort of it was like really early in like sort of act one, and but it did not get wrapped up. So that was like, okay, we've got some sort of arc here, which was really cool and really fun to see. But then as it went on, and then that freaking holy freaking crap of a twist there at the end, I found myself thinking, wow, this is really cool, this is really awesome, without sort of knowing that this is really cool and this is really awesome, because this was the season one finale to have you say, "Holy crap, what the hell is going to happen next?" All I know is I just said, "Holy crap, what's going to happen next?" Right? So mission accomplished, right? Um, but I will say this: the first season, even though I've missed some episodes, the first season of High Potential, in a lot of ways, reminds me of the first season of The Irrational, and that there is sort of this overriding sort of arc or narrative or mystery that we're trying to get to. But then they throw in this sort of like holy crap moment that sort of gives a real sort of nemesis and foe and threat to our heroine in here. So it gets the best of both worlds, right? You have this sort of mystery that sort of has been driving the narrative, and then you get this sort of like slap to the face that like says to you, "Oh crap, it's really about to start," which is a fantastic way to wrap up a season. I just did not know while I was watching it that this was sort of the point of the episode. So I just jumped on a roller coaster and held on for dear life. Um, so yeah, long story short, I really, really like what they've done with High Potential season one. Now I just have to go back and catch the episodes that I sort of missed and see if that even helps to make the oh crap moment at the end of the season even more of an oh crap moment. Because I will say this, one of the things that sort of scared me about this show and its premise is you have a character that is sort of this mystical know-it-all is not the right word, but you have this character that has this really incredible ability and talent when it comes to um, solving crimes, or at least it has this really incredible talent that sort of aids in solving crimes, but sort of makes the rest of your personal life a mess. And so, with that sort of setup, there are so many opportunities to make that talent sort of a deus ex machina, right? And it can get sort of silly, it can get sort of outlandish, and it can become formulaic. And I'll be honest, I was sort of afraid that that would be what happened with this show. However, when you give that character, someone with that sort of ability, a legitimate foil, a legitimate threat, that just sort of ramps up everything. So like I said, I'm happy with what they've done with season one, and I can't wait to season two.
I'm right there with you. And what they did ending season one in any other context with any other main storyline would have felt like trying too hard for a cliffhanger. Having what you saw at the end, which is essentially multiple huge cliffhangers, the kind of cliffhangers some shows might hold off for seasons for, happen at once, felt like a lot. But because of the way they have this character set up, the way they have our female lead set up as this, we know what her strengths are, we know what her weaknesses are. Having both of them happen at the same time plays to her strengths and weaknesses so well. And at this point in the season, with all of the episodes we've seen, we've connected with her enough to understand what she's feeling in the moment. And it really answers a question that for me started to be answered with Natasha Lyonne in Orange is the New Black, which is when you're trying to do a dramedy, when you're trying to do drama and comedy, do you need an actress who is a comedy actress doing drama or a drama actress doing comedy? And in this case, we have what I believe to be one of the greatest comedic female actresses currently out there right now. The Janine on Abbott Elementary is maybe one of the only ones that can really rival her, and that has a lot to do with her writing, not just her acting. In this case, with Caitlin, I really think she is truly one of the greatest comedic actresses on television right now, doing also drama, to the point where at the end of this season, she is doing drama over comedy. But because she has drawn us into this character so far by being the comedic actress in the room when everybody else in the room is playing a drama and is a drama actress or actor, but we ignore actors, we only focus on actresses, we really are able to sell this crazy finale moment so well. I was floored. I loved it. I can't wait till season 2. It's going to be fantastic. I agree that the general structure actually does also remind me a lot of season 1 of The Irrational. Kate, you need to watch it. It's so good. It's also really tropey and romantic if you're into that kind of thing or whatever.
Whatever.
Well, Carey, I also had high potential on my list, but you've covered it perfectly. So I will touch on just one other thing on my list that is really high up there and not at all romantic, and that is The Traitors season 3. If you live under a rock and you have not been watching The Traitors, fix that for yourself. Season 3 has been fantastic, frustrating, annoying, all the things, but so fantastic. You have something I personally have not seen overtly before on these kinds of reality shows where it's like a mole team versus the good team, or if you've played Mafia, Werewolf, any of those kind of things, same thing. There's the in this case, the traitors, but the bad guys in disguise and the good guys. And that's the formula for a couple different shows or social deception games, whatever. In this particular season, you have a team of traitors, the bad guys, who hate each other and are also trying to get each other killed so that they don't have to work with each other. It's fascinating. It's frustrating, but it's fascinating. It somehow makes them better as traitors in some way. It is so good. It is a fantastic picture into just social dynamics and working together as a team and a team within a team. Watch it. I love it. I'm not going to spoil anything for you, but there is one girl on there who was my woman of the week last time we met, Gabby. I love her so much, even more now. Just when you're ready to really give yourself a mental treat, check into that show on Peacock. Kate, what about you? What have you been watching this week?
So I'll just run it. Well, I am. Ooh, I hear the echo now. Okay. And I am not trying to catch up on Critical Role, which they've just finished campaign 3. I'm like 3 episodes behind, which translates to 24 hours behind. Oh,
24 hours is wild. Please tell me you watch it at like 2x speed.
Especially for the fights, I do. For like the emotional moments, these are like BAFTA award-winning actors. I'm watching it at regular speed.
Fair.
But like for the battles and they're doing like the roles and stuff, I'm like, you guys can play with your math rocks and I'll watch twice as fast. I a lot of times used to watch it at full speed, but I don't have time for that right now. So I watch it at 2x speed a lot of time. But yeah, that's finalizing. I'm a couple episodes behind. The final episode's like 8.5 hours. I'm still looking forward to it. Yay. In the time that I'm not watching a bunch of people play with math rocks, I read the book or listened to the audiobook for a book called Half a Soul, which is a Regency like fairy romance drama. Highly, highly recommend. I had it on like hold from the library for months, and I just kept on like postponing it because I just didn't have time. Finally read it. I'm so mad I didn't read it before because it's so good. There's other books in the series, but I think they're about different people. I haven't read any further than this, but I highly recommend it to you specifically because it is very clean. It has a lot of very, very Austen elements. Again, I like one ship and one ship only, just in different fonts. Yes, please. But basically the premise is this girl living in Regency England finds out that her mother sold her to the fairy king, or this fairy. He comes to kind of collect, and he only is able to take half her soul. And once she grows up, she basically grows up her whole life not being able to feel a lot of in the moment emotions. She can feel like deep dread or like contentment, but she can't feel happiness at food, like nice, like good food or things like that. Um, and she has a cousin, a best friend, who basically convinces everybody to like, oh, let's go to London and find husbands. And this relative gets taken along so that way she can meet the famous illustrious sorcerer who is going to help fix her. And the sorcerer is like foul-tempered and just hates everybody and has his own, you know, horrible backstory about like about torture and torment. And they basically fall in love by trying to figure out what's up with her, how to fix her stuff, and also trying to fix the corruption in the workhouses in London. So it's really set in the time. It's steeped in all this historical stuff while also being drama, while also being magic. It's very, very cute. Highly recommend. I also am in the middle of reading Miss Austen, which I talked about the show. So the book is really good so far. I'm about halfway through it. It's it's like dual storyline or dual time period. So it's back and forth between Cassandra Austen when she was like a 20-something, her failed engagement to a man who sadly dies, and her as a 6-year-old woman who is trying to collect the letters of her sister because she knows her sister had a penchant for writing things that might get her in trouble. And seeing as she wants her sister to have a famous legacy of an author, she wants to hide any evidence of Jane writing some less than favorable things. So it's her as in her 60s trying to do a little bit of like espionage and spying and trying to burn some letters. But it's actually a really like bittersweet retrospective on like as an older woman reflecting on her youth and her romance and what life is like and the joys that she can actually still kind of clutch onto, that she, even though she never married, she never had children, she never had a family of her own, she did have these like small things that she collected. And so that's a really good one too. And then I had one. Oh, and then All Creatures Great and Small. I won't go into in deep. It's season 5. About the same. Like, it's good. I'm liking it. I would say it's not my favorite season, but that has a lot to do with like my favorite characters are just not as prominent as normal, which is weird because it's the main character and his wife are my favorite characters, and they're there, but they're not the main storyline this season. And so I am missing them, but I do think that the stuff they are going through it's really well done. They're going through a lot of like the societal and cultural things that people did on like homeside during World War II, just showing like the land girls and the wardens and things like that. Kind of just the community coming together, which is really what the show is about, is community coming together. So it's really well done either way, even if I maybe am not getting the romance and the coupley moments that I miss from the main couple.
I love that. I've seen some discussion of All Creatures Great and Small on my timeline. All good, but like you said, mixed in that this is a show that is here for a long time, not a long time and a good time. but maybe a long time more than a good time. And so sometimes it's having its ebbs and flows. So it's interesting to hear. I still have it on my list to watch, and I still haven't dove headfirst into it, but I have that and the books that you just recommended immediately added to my list. They sound fantastic. I have been a little short on time, never too short on time to keep up on reality shows. The latest season of Married at First Sight has been chef's kiss, fantastic. Awful if you care about romance or people's character, but fantastic. So never too busy for terrible reality television, but sometimes too busy for wholesome pursuits such as reading. Well, it is the most wonderful time of the evening, and that time is Woman of the Week. I'm going to go first because mine is not at all a surprise. My women plural of the week is all of the unrivaled 1v1 tournament finalists, and maybe even some of the ones that didn't make it into the final but were really good or looked really good doing it. They were also fantastic, and I'm not even just like being biased because that's my hyperfixation of the next couple of months. Just the environment that they created, the fun camaraderie where this can be high stakes, but we can also be smiling and having a good time watching it, was so fantastic. It was exactly what I needed. I am enjoying it so much. I'm ready to dive headfirst into the rest of the unrivaled season after this. So my woman of the week are all the women that made it to the finals in the 1v1 tournament, and maybe some that didn't make it to the finals, but I also thought they did a really great job. Carey, you want to go next with yours?
I do, and I'm taking a little bit of inspiration from you. I've switched up my woman of the week, and it's women of the week. And you mentioned it sort of at the top of the show. Jalen Hurts' management team. Um, and so they are with Clutch Sports Group, which is a pretty significant sports management agency group in all the sports, right? But what was unique about this sort of situation is that it developed incredibly organic. It could have easily been sort of a publicity stunt, right? Say, hey, I'm going to go and seek this and sort of like stand here and like get on this soapbox, which he does, which is fantastic because he deserves it. But that's not how it started out, right? So if you know anything about Jalen Hurts, he played college football at Alabama, got benched in the national championship game, saw a freshman come in and lead his team to victory. He ultimately went on to another school, won a Heisman Trophy, pretty good player in college, but there were still questions about his abilities and that sort of thing. So when it was time for him to find an agent, there was this woman, Nicole Lynn, who is a sports agent, who reached out to him and said, "Hey, do you have any sort of representation? Give me a ring. Let's have a conversation." And one of the better things about all of this is that obviously someone like Jalen Hurts would have a chip on his shoulder about wanting to prove people wrong. And as you can imagine, a woman in sports management would sort of feel the same way and have that same kind of energy. So they connected in that way. And from that point on, she's represented him. I think it was a couple of years ago that he signed an extension, making him, I think it was the richest extension for a quarterback at the time, which is fantastic. And I will also name the rest of the members of his management team. I will try not to butcher their names. I wrote it down actually. So you have Nicole Lynn, who's basically his main agent. Then you have Chantel Romaine. You have Shakima Simmons Winter. There's Jenna Malfris and Rachel Everett, who all make up his team. Three of them are Black women, which is also fantastic during Black History Month. Let's represent. And so those are my women of the week.
I love your woman of the week. I'm fully like raised as a Chiefs fan since birth type of person. And Jalen Hurts and what he has put together in terms of his performance on the team he's built around him, the all women team that he's built around him, I've seen beautiful pictures of him and his family, his wife and the kiddo or girlfriend and the kiddos that he has, all of that. Fantastic. I could not have picked a better opponent to defeat the team I've been rooting for. Nothing but respect. Fantastic. Love it. 10 out of 10. Kate, you're up.
Okay, so I had a hard time picking mine because, I mean, I was talking basically about those two books. I kind of wrote down both Cassandra and Dora, but because you'll hear me talk about Miss Austen eventually, and I haven't read the book yet, I'll talk about Dora. That is like the name of the character. I think it's kind of funny. Theodora is a long name. It's a period drama. It's a long name. But so Dora from Half a Soul it's a really interesting character because I've read so many times, like a lot of actually in murder mysteries, but several different versions of a character who has some version of what you could diagnose or assume is something equating to autism or something like that. In this situation and plenty of other fantasy things that I've seen and watched, there's plenty of things that kind of feel like that, especially with a lot of Brandon Sanderson. But with this one, it was a specific flavor that it wasn't they weren't trying to make it into a savant type deal, which a lot of times these kind of stories fall into the pitfall of. Instead, it was far more about this young girl who knew she couldn't feel or couldn't express and predict people's emotions in the way that everybody around her could, and she felt alienated because of that. And in the course of the story, what's also kind of a lot of times assigned to people like Dora, whatever you want to diagnose her with, is a strict, to the point of blindness or rigidity, justice or moral code. But in giving that character these attributes, she actually comes out being the most empathetic, kind-hearted, willing to serve person. And I think it is a beautifully complex and compassionate, but not pitying perspective on somebody who would not normally be the romantic lead in a book like this. And I think it was really well done and really well explored. I will say how they kind of wrap everything up at the end of the book is a bit rushed because it's not the most satisfying because of like all the elements. But this one was very much like I just enjoyed the journey that it put me on. And so if you fumble the ball a little bit on how you tie everything up, but it's happy and it's okay, then it's fine. I don't really care, because it was such a beautiful representation of, she saw the world differently than everybody else, and it cut straight through to what was going on and what was wrong around her. And in seeing that, you saw somebody who is naturally reserved, naturally has a hard time accessing her emotions, having almost a bleeding heart for the suffering around her and determined to fix it. And I thought it was a really beautiful way of handling it, and I really enjoyed it. So that's my woman of the week, because I think it was such a beautifully done character.
I love that. That was so sweet. You both had such good picks this week. 10 out of 10.
Yeah.
Well, we are a few minutes over. Thank you for lending me a few extra minutes of your time. We're a few minutes over because I wouldn't stop ranting about Valentine's Day and love and romance before we went live. Just a little behind the scenes clip there. I was being annoying, as you could all imagine. That was a Glinda level hair flip. I love that for myself. I will see you all in a couple weeks, where we will have quite a lot to talk about. Obviously, the finale of Miss Scarlet and Duke, but we also have a few other things coming up soon. We have White Lotus season 3 coming out. I am beside myself. I'm so excited. Suits LA. Hold on, let me flip the other side of hair. I am beside myself about that as well, even though we hate it, but we love it. Whatever. We're going to be in a toxic relationship with Suits LA. So get excited for that. And many, many other things will continue airing or come back. So I hope you guys both have a wonderful Valentine's Day, Galentine's Day, whatever it is that you're celebrating, anti-Valentine's Day, it's equal, no judgment here. And I
Desperation Day.
exasperation day is what you said. Whatever gets you to the discounted chocolate at the end of the road, that's the direction. And I will see you all in a couple weeks. Bye.
Bye.